This founder interview is with serial entrepreneur Todd Folk. This guy has started his own cigar company, his own marketing agency. But in this interview, Todd shares how he started a luxury sailing business with absolutely no experience, scaling to hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue every single month. In this interview, you'll learn how to identify a gap in the market to create a luxury brand, the exact steps he's used to market his business, and how to build partnerships with 5-star resorts, and why being an expert in your niche is critical to business success. If you could hit that like button and subscribe button, I'm a really small channel and I would appreciate it greatly. Okay, thanks, bye.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
So my name is Todd Folk. I am a serial entrepreneur. I believe here we're going to be primarily talking about my one business, Blue to Bloom Charters. My whole background, my whole life has just been building, selling businesses, learning about business, and just everything that is involved in the whole process. I truly find it fun and enjoyable. Is really the way I like to say the whole game itself. I actually just love it. My whole background's always been throughout business.
Awesome. Yeah. And so this interview, we will be talking about Blue Doubloon. And what is that?
So Blue Doubloon Charters is a luxury sailing experience and charter experience in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and now also Fajardo, Puerto Rico. We structure in two different ways, but primarily, like I said, it's a sailing experience. So people who want to go out on a boat, specifically, we focus on sailing catamarans, and I could go into a little bit detail as to why that specific market. But we focus on sailing catamarans, and we can do everything from small groups of 6 people or less. They're like all inclusive. So, captain and crew, but like open wine and craft beer bars, charcuterie boards, fruits, locally made chocolates, private chefs, up to larger groups of like up to 13, where if they want to bring their own stuff, they can, but we can also provide additional services as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that got started? What inspired you to start Blue Doubloon?
Yeah, so this actually jumps a little bit further back to why Puerto Rico. So my partner, Krista, both partner in business, partner in life, we live together in Jersey City, right outside of New York City. And I used to own another company for restaurant marketing there. And she was a 100-ton master captain, charter captain in the New York City harbor. And one day she comes to me and she goes, "Hey, we're going to be doing a charter in the BVI where I'll be teaching some people, and I can bring someone to be the chef on the boat for free. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not, man? Free sail around the BVIs. That sounds amazing, right?" So while we were planning and going through all of that stuff, she looks at me and she goes, "Hey, we have to figure out on our way back, do we just want to go to Miami and do a long layover there, a city that Chris and I both really like, me especially, but we both really like it. Or," she was like, "we could do a 10-hour layover in San Juan, Puerto Rico." She goes, "I've never been to Puerto Rico. Do you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Let's do it. I haven't been to Puerto Rico in forever." So we do the layover. We have a wonderful time on our 10 hours here. And then we go back to New York City. About a month and a half pass, and I walk over to her. I'm like, "Hey, love, our lease runs out later this year. Do you want to move to Puerto Rico for a year?" And she's like, "I've been there for 10 hours. And I'm like, And she's like, "Screw it. Why not?" Right? So right then and there, we decided that we are going to move to Puerto Rico later on that year. And then COVID hit and like everything just upended in the world, and it ended up being an amazing experience because we got to leave New York City during COVID and go to a beautiful tropical paradise, right? So we're there for about like 6-7 months. And then it really just boiled down to, all right, my restaurant marketing company is not doing well, COVID, obviously, in New York City, obviously, and she needs to find work. And now I need to figure out something to do. So we're like, all right, are we going to stay here or no? And we just ultimately, without question, we're like, we're going to stay here. So we're like, all right, well, we need to find something to do. So either you can do work or I could do work, or we could just start something. And she's a 100-ton master captain with experience in chartering, and I start businesses. Simple. So we started to look into that space. And that is the long-winded story of why a charter business.
Absolutely perfect. I love the context. And so, okay, so you're down there. You guys decide to move down there. You love it down there. Everything else in the United States and pretty much the world isn't doing too well. And so you see this opportunity. When did you first see validation that this chartering business could work down there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So just chartering in general, it's the Caribbean, man. Chartering is just wildly popular in general. So we had a feeling that we could probably make something, right? And there's a lot of ways you go about it. But the big one for me really boiled down to, in anything, when you're looking at starting a business, don't play where everyone else plays. Even though it may seem like we're playing in the charter space where a lot of other players are, we're actually in a very unique niche within it. So we, again, like I said, we focused on sailing catamarans and the luxury space, right? Every boat where we started in San Juan, they're great companies, don't get me wrong, but all of them focus on the same exact thing. Ticketed, up to 6 people, boats from the 1980s, monohull sailboats. That's it. If you want one of those, that's what you get. And there's one like 1990s catamaran, pretty old and everything like that. But again, they do 6 people or less, ticketed. So if you went with your partner, you may see another couple on there. We don't do that. We are pure private. If it's just 2 people, they're chartering the whole boat. That whole boat is just for them. So we focus on that unique space because looking around, we saw luxury resort, luxury resort, luxury resort, huge new luxury resort being like, they're popping up everywhere, but there's nothing in that space that caters to that. And that's where we got the idea. And then we wanted to follow through by reaching out to the luxury resorts to be like, hey, is this something your clients actually want to see?
That is awesome. And can you walk us through the process of launching and promoting your first catamaran service?
Yeah. So like I said, the big one right out the gate was market research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And market research, there's a million ways you could go about it, but most people, when they think of market research, they think like, oh, I'm just Google this up, look this, like find out what statistics are here, find out what statistics are there. What is statistics say this? No. To me, market research is getting in the dirt, right? So I'm like, I have this target clientele. Is it a real target clientele? Well, where do they stay, right? So I went to every single resort. I reached out to every single concierge team on the island. And I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Can I have 15 minutes of your time, right? And that way, so now I'm traveling all of these places and it does 2 things. Well, technically it does 3 things, but first one, lets them know I exist and I care, right? Like right off the bat, now they have a face to this coming potential business. 2, they know that I care about their thoughts and their opinions right out the gate. 3, they're already connected with me now. So when I follow up 6 months later, I'm like, hey, remember that 15-minute conversation we had about this thing I was thinking about doing? That you said, wow, that would be amazing, would love that. Well, I did it. Let's work together.
So how are you working together with these guys? How are you convincing these guys to work with you?
Yeah. So first off, I have a product that their customers want. Like it's the simplest thing is that I've created a product that their customers want. So their customers come to them, their concierge teams, and they're like, hey, we'd really like to do this type of experience, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, well, excellent. We have the right person. So it's really not even that hard of a sell for a lot of them. It's just a pretty much natural flow of the process. So with a lot of them, like one of the largest resorts that we work with, the Ritz-Carlton in Dorado, their concierge team we're on a WhatsApp thread. So they'll be like, hey, we have a person, he wants to do this. This is the size of the group. This is this, all the details. Can you do it? And I go, yes or no. And then now after a few months of working with them, we actually now just bill directly at the end of the month right to the hotel. And then the hotel ACH, which is what I prefer, because if anything goes wrong, I know the hotel's going to pay me versus having to worry about chargebacks and stuff. It's fantastic. I love it. And we're building that out with more other of the resorts here on island as well.
So that's perfect. So they're marketing for you, and then they're also taking some credibility so that if something happens, that helps with that too.
Absolutely. It smooths out my payment cycle. And like I said, a lot of people in the charter space don't like to do a lot of partnerships, which I find weird. I love that because if they sell, I don't have to. And that frees up so much of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also helps them deliver something else to their guests too, an experience for their guests. That is amazing.
And they get free trips because I love taking those guys out. It's twofold. One, it's a show of appreciation for them putting in awesome work, right? Because these concierge teams, they put in amazing, right? They talk me up like crazy and then we deliver. It's that simple, they talk me up, I deliver. I don't think I've ever had a bad complaint from a single customer ever. And the other one is, after that, thank you, is they get to learn and relearn and then relearn what the experience is like, because it's so much easier for you to sell something that you firsthand know versus this is supposed to be a wonderful experience. They're like, no. We actually went out there 2 weeks ago. The night sail is unbelievable. Really, the night sail? Yeah, you should try that. It's amazing. I couldn't believe how beautiful the city was lit up at night. done. So it becomes so much easier for them.
That is a great way of marketing for sure. So do you guys own your own boat? Do you rent the boat?
Great question. So we lease all of our vessels from the original owners. And the reason we do that right now is because of U.S. Coast Guard law. So in U.S. Coast Guard law, if you own the vessel, you cannot have the owner. So in this scenario, Krista would be one of them. She wouldn't be allowed to be the captain or on the boat at all for larger groups. But since we lease the vessel, we pay the owner a portion, and she can actually be a captain on the boat as well. Now, we have another project going on right now where we're raising money to construct a shipyard in Ponce to manufacture 55 and 75-foot large-scale luxury yachts for the charter market, because I need them, and I need them bad. That's a whole nother thing we could always go into down the line. But with that project, those boats we would own because they would be rated for commercial use, and we would not need a bareboat then. We'll be able to do like 40 person groups instead of 13-person groups on those.
And you're seeing demand for that right now then?
About 20% of my inquiries are group sizes I cannot legally do.
Well, that's got to hurt.
They're the ones that make money. Like those are price difference, to give you an idea. For, let's say you wanted to go out 3 hours, right? And you wanted 3 hours for a group of 10 or something like that. Realistically, you'd probably be looking around $2,175 or $2,175 plus, food and drinks, right? But if you want this boat in a luxury setting for 40 people, well, like, cause you're corporate or something like that, because corporate's a lot of what these things are. You're literally looking at $12,000, $13,000, $15,000 for those 3 hours, if not more. So it's a way, way bigger price difference and much, much, much more profitable. And because we'll own the vessels outright, because I don't have to lease them, it's a much higher profit margin. It's just really difficult to get these types of boats, so we plan on building them.
I kind of want to touch on like your partner's experience. I'm sure it's amazing having a partner where, you are kind of seems like the marketing side and she's, the captain. Does she run all of these tours, these experiences?
So initially she did. Yeah. See, we have more employees now and several other captains as well. So she still does some, but now she just oversees everything on that aspect. But I think we mentioned this before in the write-up. She's a 100-ton master captain. She has experience chartering in New York City, but like she even had a ton of experience on the water before that. She's a professional whitewater river guide. She's done class 5 rapids. She's guided people down the Rio Marañón, part of the Amazon River. She's done the Colorado River, the salmon, the moose. Like she's done a lot of big water rivers as a professional guide. Like, so the water's something she's always loved and always been a part of. So when we were together, I was a sailor and she kind of like transitioned into that because it's like 6+ hours to go up to do whitewater from New York. And it's like, 10 minutes to get to the river where the sailboat is, right? So it made a lot of sense for her to try it. And she just fell in love with it. And just like with everything I love about her, she bored right into it. Within like 2 years of first learning how to sail, she's getting her captain's license. She's on vessels and she's learning everything she possibly can. She's a beast. I love her.
What a beautiful relationship there, especially business too. Do you mind talking about revenue?
Yeah, no, not an issue.
Whatever you're willing to share, maybe your year's revenue, something like that.
Yeah. So, we are revenue generating now. We're creeping up on our full second year in revenue generation. First year we operated in business, it was all about, so with the first boat, it was all about finding the vessel. The original owner purchased and everything like that, got it financed and everything. Fundraising, all those fun things. And then it's, getting permits, et cetera, et cetera. So it was like all the setup was year. Year 2, we did about $250,000 in revenue. And this year we're on target for $400,000 in revenue. Next year we'll be targeting about $600,000 to $650,000.
Wow. Good for you guys. Great for you guys. And so moving toward the marketing aspect of this, and I think you've already touched a lot about it. When you're going up to these concierges, what's that pitch like?
So this is the big kicker, is like, it's not really a pitch, because like, I believe with everything, it's, I can tell you what I have, or I can learn what you need. You know what I mean? So like, I'll give you the gist, like, hey man, I focus on this. do you have any types of needs for this? And if so, what do they look, right? Because if I learn what they need, they know they can depend on me for anything in that space. But if I tell them, hey, this is what I do, this is strictly what I do, and take it or leave it, right? I just don't think it works, especially when you're in the higher luxury market, right? Because they'll get clients who will be like, oh yeah, the package is fine. Whatever the package is perfectly fine. But then there's going to be other ones who are like, oh, well, I really don't like this. I'd really like that. This is not a joke. I'd really like to have clams, oysters, and caviar on the boat. And I know this boat's going to be going out in 2.5 hours, and I'm asking for it now for the first time, but that's what I want. All right, well, we do. I'll make that happen. We absolutely did. That was the first time I think I've shucked oysters in 12 years. But like, it's always about learning what they need, what are the needs of their client. And my pitch is really around that. It's like, hey, this is what I offer loosely, but what do you need? And what do your clients need? And let's see how I can modify and mold what I do to meet your needs. And that's really the pitch, and it works.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing strategy, because you're not asking a closed-ended question. You're asking, what do you need? And they come back to you with more
Always.
options.
Absolutely. They always come back. I don't think I've had a single place, like I've had some where like, hey man, like we'd love to work with you on a more closer relationship, but the hotel doesn't do vendors like this. All right, I get that. But their concierge team just calls me up individually now because they know I'll take care of stuff. And then some are like, hey, like this has worked out really well. Let's do an exclusive contract where we just work with you. I like that even more.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. And how do they push and advertise for you? Do they give out pamphlets? Do they advertise around the hotel?
That's really that's hotel exclusive. Like, so like some of them they just have a concierge desk and people go up and go, hey, I'm looking for stuff to do. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. Some of the really nice ones, like Dorado Beach, which I think is an excellent space. They actually have, it's called their booklet of memories, and every guest gets it. And it's all these wonderful excursions that concierge can book for you. And we have 3 or 4 pages, like entire pages. It's just us and what we do, because we are able to mold and modify ourselves to meet the needs of their client.
You did a written interview for us, and it was amazing. And that's where it kind of led to this face-to-face interview. And in that interview, you mentioned that you were going to start paid ads. Have you started that? And how's that going?
Yeah, absolutely. Net Pro overall, I'm just going like this because, so we moved into slow season. So like, they're not as high as I'd like them to be, but like nothing's as high as I'd like it to be, a slow season. But we've been using this as a testing ground for like, hey, really refining specific keywords. Hey, if we adjust these things. But when we started running them in like Q2, we're actually getting really, really good returns. I think in 1 month, I spent like, I think it was like 1,500 on ads, and we did 28,000 in revenue off of those ads. Not like revenue of general, just off of these closed from ads that we ran, which, man, I'm not going to complain about that. That's excellent because our margins are pretty solid. Right. So right now it's a little bit lower, but we're still positive every single month.
Wow. Good for you guys. And what kind of content do you push out there that you're getting these returns on?
So, this is awful. Our content game is terrible. I'll be the first one to tell you that, right? So if you would look at our Instagram, I think it's at blue.theballoon. Yeah, that's how they do Instagram. Yeah, at blue.theballoon. I don't think I put a photo on that thing for like a year, right? I just don't update it. I just don't care. Our Facebook is god-awful atrocious. I don't think I ever put anything, right? It's because the channels that work for us are very effective. Going directly to where the client is with the concierge teams. We have a few third-party brokers. So like, that's people who want to do a trip are going to them. And then the other one with the ads, we only do search ads. So you are actively looking for something like us, right? And we're there to provide it. Like, there's a lot of charter companies and they do like, your Instagram ads, Facebook, like tons of visuals, tons of content. And that's great, but I don't care. Let them play there, because I think because I'm always looking at these things, I think the last time I scrolled through my Instagram, I saw like 30 different companies running Instagram ads. But when I do search, there's like 3 companies. So I'm where less people are. So I believe you get a much more effective return. And I just make sure I have a good website.
Yeah, definitely. And plus, if they're working right, why change? Double down on them.
Exactly.
Well, that's beautiful. So kind of coming toward the end side of the interview, there's questions I'd like to ask you because you are a serial entrepreneur. You've started many businesses. And in the written interview that I referred to earlier, you referred to patience being the best thing that you've learned to be successful.
Absolutely.
How did you develop the patience that you mentioned, and how has that impacted your success?
Yeah, so 100%, man. I will say this time and time and time and time and time again. The most important and crucial thing to have as any type of entrepreneur is patience, because patience will let you fail and it'll help you rebound, because it might just not be right now. You might get something on the tail end, right? If you don't have patience, you want everything now and immediately, and that will lead you to make dumb decisions quite often, right? But if you have the understanding and the patience to be like, hey, I'm going to try this, test this, see how this works. And if it fails, I learned something. I didn't fail. I learned something. And if it succeeds, I gained something, right? But like, if you don't have that level of patience and understanding to be able to try and test and go through all of these things, you want everything right now, you're just going to get frustrated and you're going to make poor decisions. Being able to take your time, understand that things don't always happen right away. Sometimes they will, and that's amazing, right? But more often than not, things take time, and you have to accept that. And that is a crucial aspect of any business build.
How did you learn this patience? Was it instilled in you from an early age, or did you have to learn this along the way?
That's a difficult question, really, because I think it just like I failed a lot, man. Like, I have failed a lot. And the hardest thing in all of that is learning to accept that a failure isn't a failure. A failure is a lesson, right? And when the more and more I failed, the more and more I learned, the more I realized that patience is more and more important, because the moment I started to become a little patient, the more I started to see the long-term benefits of it and how that started to snowball things quicker. So it wasn't really like I sat back and was like, hey man, like, I'm just gonna practice being patient. Like, I wish I could say it's just like training a dog, man. Just like put a snack on your nose and wait for a minute and then you can eat it. But it's not really like that. I'll tell people all the time, it's like, that's a skill set to have, but it's not an easy thing to learn without going through some things that make you learn it if it's not an innate thing for you. And it wasn't innate for me.
That's really helpful to a lot of people who are stuck, because you look for, well, how do I do this? How do I do this? And you put it off. And then from what you're saying, you got to start that, find that patience and find that way, find that failure and those lessons.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing, when I say for people who are stuck, and just something in general, whatever you do in whatever business you choose, what I always recommend, and this is probably like be one of my biggest pieces of advice just in general for any new business person. Whatever you choose, give yourself a 2-year limit. And by year 2, you should be an expert in that space. I mean, research, learn everything, bury yourself into it and become an expert. I'll use me in the charter space, for instance, right? I've never owned a charter company. It's my first time. I've never owned a business in the maritime space at all. I didn't know any of the rules, any of the law. I knew nothing. All I knew was my partner was a 100-ton master captain and she was a contract charter captain in New York, right? So she knew her little element, but there's all the rest of the stuff. So because this is something we decided in, I buried myself in it. So I'm at the point now where there's teams on the U.S. In the U.S. Coast Guard who want me to give consultation to other charter companies here to update them and discuss with them about how the laws work, which means the Coast Guard views me as an expert in this space, and I'm 3 years in. So by year 2, I knew all of this information. And the same thing is now happening with the shipyard. I think I'm like, dude, if I showed you some of the stuff, I'm like digging in like ABS, just like steel and aluminum welding rules for shipbuilding. I'm burying myself into that because I want to eventually, by year 2, I'll be an expert, because I think that is essential, because the more of an expert you are in it, the less likely you are to fail.
That's a great line. And my next question was, do you see your entrepreneurial mindset being teachable? I think you kind of just answered that question right there.
Yeah. So realistically, so to me, it's like a scenario of like, what do you define as an entrepreneur? To me, actually, I'd love to ask you, what do you define as an entrepreneur?
I think someone who takes success into their own hands.
All right. I like that. That works. For me, there's business owners and there's entrepreneurs, right? And this is not a knock on business owners by any metric. A business owner to me is someone who goes into business in a safer, more established method. Like I'll use this in my charter company. If I would have done what the other 20 charter companies do, I would have been a business owner. I would not be an entrepreneur in that endeavor, right? Because I knew it exists. I knew it works. Everybody's doing it. So I'm piggybacking on those successes. But I went out in a completely different route. Same industry, but a completely different way of targeting, completely different way of building this, a lot more costs up front because the boats are way more expensive. So to me, that makes an entrepreneur. And now I'm doubling down on that in the aspect of like, I now found a need. And this is the kicker for me. An entrepreneur finds the need of the market. That is the kicker above all. You want to be an entrepreneur, you need to start looking analytically at the market. Find out what does it need more than anything. There was a ton of charter boats, but no luxury charters. That's a need. All these luxury resorts, no luxury boats. That doesn't make any sense. There's a clear, determined need. Now I'm looking at it with the shipyard. Oh my gosh, there's so many large groups of people that want to do stuff. And there's no one really who has these types of boats. Why is that? Because the US doesn't really build any boats like this. There's very few companies. All right, well, there's a need. I'm going to build it, right? That's an entrepreneur. You find the need. You don't piggyback on what's already established, which, by the way, is a great method to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not me saying entrepreneurs are better than business owners. No, they're both equally needed. But to me, that's the differentiator. So like, is entrepreneurship easy to teach? I don't think so. And that's primarily because you have to have a specific mindset where you're always looking and analyzing in a space to determine need. And then 2, you have to have the risk tolerance to do that. And then 3, you have to have the desire, demand, and love to become an expert in that space in the shortest amount of time as possible. And that's very, very, very difficult to do just in general. And most people, that's not their thing. You have to love that. And that's why I think entrepreneurship is probably not super teachable. But business ownership is absolutely teachable.
That is some of the best advice I've ever heard. And it makes me ask something else. And that is, where did you find your entrepreneurial mindset? Where did you find that risk tolerance?
Since I was young, in all honesty, like I was the kid, man, like, you get fundraisers and stuff like that at school, man. I'd like sell my chocolate bars and I'd go around, grab all my other friends. Like slinging and selling has always been something I love to do. Like it's just fun because like to me, selling is not me selling something. It's me providing you something that brings you joy. And that's how I always saw it, right? And then from there, it just went around like, hey, what other things can I do that fill the needs and fill the desires of people, right? And that's really where it boiled down to like, well, selling leads to making money and money is a business thing. And like, you just really just like move more into it. And I just got the bug really early. Like when I was a teenager, I had a landscaping company and stuff like that. So you mow lawns, you make some money, you hire a few people, stuff like that. Eventually you sell it off. You have to like, but the whole thing is like, it's always been a thing that like, I've always had the drive to go out, sell, talk to people, find ways, especially find those niches of what people need. And that's been ingrained in me. Well, patience hasn't been, that has always been ingrained.
One of my last questions to you is, what is your advice? And I think you kind of already touched on this, but what advice would you give someone looking to start their own business?
Yeah, I'm going to really roll it back to what I said before. Whatever you want to do, I cannot stress this enough. I'm like moving my head. Whatever you want to do, I cannot stress this enough. I'm an expert. Give yourself 2 years, bury yourself into it. Absolutely everything you can learn, every tiny detail from legal to fine tuning of the business, bury yourself in it because you will learn very, very fast. Is this for you or is it not for you? Because if you find that this stuff is boring and I don't like it, you're going to struggle when times get hard. But if you find that you're buried into it, you love it, you're an expert, and this is really something you can get behind, you'll do significantly better. And your probability of success skyrockets. So don't be lazy. Take the time and bury yourself. Absolutely bury yourself into it. become an expert. That's the best advice I could give.
Todd Folk from Blue to Bloom. It was so awesome to talk to you. You have so many amazing inspirational words. Thank you for taking time to do this.
Absolutely, Corey. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been truly a pleasure. And I hope everything I said is of value to your listeners.